folks, welcome back. This is Joel, and in this video we will continue our discussion on the VMware vSphere 7.0 in fact. Now in the previous two videos I think you would have checked, if you're probably not, you can go back to my channel and you can look under the VMware playlist. You would see me talking about creating your lab on EVNG, right? So I had been getting quite some requests on doing that, so I did a couple of videos on how to install the ESXi, how to install the vCenter on EVNG and do some housekeeping configuration, right? Now in this video I'll actually show you one of my other lab, right, where so like I said in the previous video as well, there are many options, right, to create a VMware setup. Now people like me, network engineers, we use EVNG a lot, but you can, especially for VMware, you can actually do it right on your laptop as well, right? It's just that your laptop should be a little strong, right, with some good specifications. My laptop seems to have around 16 GB of RAM, so I can still pull it off. It's a bit slow, so maybe the recording is going to be a little bit slow, but I can still pull it off, right? I can run at least 3 ESXi hosts, and with each of them having a couple of VMs and all of that, right? So that's mainly the thing. So this lab. Let me speak a couple of minutes on this particular lab, right? How I have set this up. So what I'm showing you right now is basically my VMware Fusion, right? You guys probably might have as well. If you are on Windows, probably you can go for Workstation Player, right? So that's the alternative. On my Mac, you know, the only hypervisor which I can use is the VMware Fusion. And I'm not sure which version I'm using. Let me show you that. It's 11.5.1, right? So anyway, so I'm using this particular hypervisor, and what I'm doing is I have set up a 3 ESXi host, right? Each of the ESXi host generally needs 4 GB of RAM minimum, right? So I have 4 GB of RAM given to each of the hosts, whereas for ESXi 1, I think I've given little more, probably 8 GB or 6 GB, I'm not very sure, because this particular, the first ESXi is going to run a couple of VMs for us, right? So let me show you the topology. Let me draw the topology of how I have built this, and then we'll talk about the agenda of this particular video, which will be a little bit around the networking of VMware, right? In fact, we'll mainly be talking about the standard switches, right? VMware standard switch, right? Cool. That being said, let's draw this. So what do we have? So we have 3 ESXi hosts, like I showed you, right? So let's say we have this is your ESX1, right? We've got the rest of the two, that is this is your ESX2, and this is your ESX3. Now what we have inside them, we have our VMs, right? This is our we have a firewall inside this, right, which is running as a VM. This is a PF sense, you know, a firewall, which I'll show you in a bit. And then I also have the vCenter running inside this, right? The vCenter is running inside the first ESXi itself, right? And I don't have any VMs running on in these two ESXi as of now, right? In fact, this is shut down for now, and only these both are turned on, right? Now that being said, so now how does and then obviously all of this is where this the whole setup is on my if I have to put a dotted line here, this whole setup is inside my VMware Fusion, right? So now what I've done is from the networking perspective, right, it's very important to understand the space. When you talk about the networking, let me just grab my mouse here, give me a second. Yeah. So when you talk about networking, what I've done here is, so basically, I mean, you probably would have already heard about or read about the VMware standard switches a bit. If not, don't worry. So we'll talk a bit about that now. So how does the switching work in VMware is that it's the fundamentals are still the same. I mean, you want to talk between two different hosts, you have to go through a switch, right? So that's the idea, and you can create a number of switches, right? I'm not sure about the total number, but you on a single host. So all these standard switches, they are specific to a particular ESXi host, right? So ESXi host in your actual production environment, this ESXi host will be an actual UCS server or a HP server, because we are doing a lab here. You know, this ESXi also is a VM, right? But in your actual physical data center, each of these boxes, big boxes, will be your servers, physical servers. Anyway, so what does physical servers have? The physical servers surely are going to have some NIC, right? network interface cards. Imagine in my case, I have 3 network interface cards, right? You can have more, right? But in my topology on my example, I have 3. Now, what's the main problem statement here? You really want to connect these physical NICs, right, somehow to these VMs so that they are able to talk between each other, at the same time reach out to the internet as well, right? So that's the whole problem statement. How do you solve this? Switches, right? So switches comes into play. Now, the switches in VMware, right, in my topology, in fact, I have, I guess, 2 switches, and we call that as vSwitch 0 and vSwitch 1. Right, I don't think we can change the name of the switch. I have not seen that till now. Maybe you can. That's not very relevant. In my topology, I have 2 switches, right, per host. I think the same thing applies here as well. It's on EX2 and 3 as well, right? But mainly let's concentrate on the first host. So we have 2 switches, and what we have done here is the physical cards, right? These are the physical cards. What are the physical cards? Use a different color maybe, or let's say color it, right? So these are the physical cards which you see here, right? Physical NIC cards, right? Again, going back to my topology or my lab, these are also not physical because they are literally nothing but the cards which are present inside my VMware Fusion, right? So if you see my settings, see here, these are the 3 network cards. Now, because we are doing something called as a nested virtualization, these 3 are not really physical network cards. They are also virtualized. But in your, try to kind of think of a data center wherein, this whole ESXi will be a one particular server, in which case these 3 will be actually physical cards, right? Cool. So that being said, so these 3 physical cards, what I've done now is I've kind of divided, right, the workload. So I've given these 2 cards to this particular switch, and I've given this particular card, right, to this particular switch. And I'll show you how to do that, right? So in a topology, or in a VMware architecture, this is basically the vSwitch, right? I think you know that by now. This is called as the vSwitch, whereas this one, what you see here, this is called as the PNIC. Okay, let's use a different pen probably. It's not visible. Okay, so this one is actually called as the PNIC. There are different names. Sometimes people also call it as VMNeck as well, right? Also, you can also call as uplink, right? Because these are all physical ports, right? That's why these are the names given to it. Now on the other side, so this is on one side. On one side, you have the physical cards connected. What is the other side connecting to the vSwitches? So that's where, VNeck comes into play. So each of these VMs which are there, right? For example, here we have firewall, right? So the firewall will also be connected, right, down here to this particular vSwitch. Here the the vCenter which is there is also connected to the vSwitch. Now these ports are mainly called as, what are these called? These are called VNecs. So these are virtual NICs, and these are the physical NICs, and the vSwitch is basically connecting both of them, right? And they are allowing for the communication to happen, right? So that's the whole funda here, right? So that's one thing. Now I think this image is a bit dirty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this one, and let's draw once again to show you what is happening in my lab in more detail, right? So let's just get rid of that. Sorry, let's do that once again. It did not get erased. Okay, it's a bit slow, weird. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just concentrating on the ESXi 1, right? So inside my ESXi 1, I want to go deeper into it, right? So let's draw a bigger one, right? So this is my ESXi just 01, right? The first host. And this, like I said, I have 2 VMs. One is my firewall, right? This is my firewall, and I have a vCenter as well, right? You can have any kind of VMs. I mean, it's not that you have to run these 2 VMs itself. And like we spoke about, we have 2 vSwitches. One is vSwitch 0, vSwitch 1. And I also told that these guys, the firewalls, VNecs, whatever the network adapters coming from here, they are called VNecs, and they are connected to the vSwitches as well. Whichever vSwitch you want to connect to, in fact, you basically connect it to what we call as a port group, right? And the port group is then kind of connected to the vSwitch, right? But from a topology perspective, this is what you see, right? So we have it something like this, right? These are literally your management, these are literally nothing but your management ports, right? Because whenever you create a VM, you would really want to manage those VMs, right? So you really want some kind of connectivity to the network. So yeah, that's there. And what I've also done is, sorry, let me just get rid of that. I think I made a mistake. So this guy also is connected to this particular vSwitch, right? And I'm using this vSwitch 0 as some kind of think of it as a management switch, right? In a data center, that's how you do it. Depending on your functionality, you kind of segregate it either in different port groups or in different vSwitches, depends on your architecture. Now in my case, what I've done is I have, like I said, both the VMs connected to the vSwitch 0, and I also have one more, let's say network adapter, which is connected to this vSwitch 1, right? And on the physical side, right, like I said, I have 3 ports here. Now these 3 ports, what I've done is the 2 ports I have provisioned it, right? These 2 ports I have provisioned it in my LAN, right, which is on my MacBook, right? So this is provisioned in my LAN, and I have provisioned this one in my WAN, right, which is basically, when I say WAN, it basically has internet connectivity. Now look at how cool this is, right? Now because of this, what I can do is I can take this guy and connect it up here, right? So that, anyone connecting to the vSwitch 1, right, in that particular network, it will have connectivity to the internet. Whereas all the other guys, right, for example, from the vSwitch 0, I have connected it this way, right? So now anything which is coming on my vSwitch 0, it will kind of get load balanced and get sent to the LAN, right? And anything coming on my vSwitch 1, it's kind of like my WAN switch, or I'm simulating my WAN stuff, right? So this is mainly what you will get to see, traditional VMware switch, right, or standard switch. This is called a standard switch. There's one more thing called as distributed switch. I mean, it's a little complicated topic, but if we have time, probably we'll discuss. So we talked about, let me just rewrite whatever we talked about, right? Because there are a lot of terms here which is sure to confuse people. So we have vSwitch here. On one side, always remember you're going to have the PNIC, right? So you're going to have the PNIC over here. In fact, you're going to have actually this is the PNIC literally. I mean, these 2 parts, right? These 2 dots. Anyway, and on the other side, you're going to have the, what are you going to have? You're going to have the VNeck, right? So this one over here. VNeck are basically NICs given to the VMs. PNICs are the physical NICs, right? So these 3 topics we talked about. And the port group, I was talking about port group. I think I referenced port group. Port group is just think of it as a management concept, right? So management concept, because what I can do is I'll tell you the use case of port group, and then you will be able to understand why we have it, right? Port group is basically what I can do is I can put these 2, let's say NICs, right? These 2 VNICs or these 2 interfaces, right? I can put it in what we call as a port group. I can create a port group. Now, use of this is, once I create this port group, I can define some properties for it, right? I can do some traffic shaping, right? I can do some security. So mainly for that, right? So it's a way to aggregate ports and then do some policing on top of it, add some policing on top of it, right? So that's one thing. So we talked about port group as well. What else is left? There is one more type of port called as the kernel ports, right? Right. So just to recap, we talked about VNeck, we talked about vSwitch, we talked about PNIC, port group. There's one more type of port, right? One more type of NIC. Let's say one more type of NIC. It is actually not a port. Sorry, my bad reference over there. It's actually a NIC, right? And that is a NIC which is associated with the whole server itself, right, or the whole ESXi host. And what we call that, that's mainly nothing but a VM kernel NIC, right? We call it as a VM kernel. So I'll use a different color maybe, right, just to show that. So the VM kernel NIC is basically something which is, think of it as associated with not associated with the VMs, it is associated with the ESXi. So I'm going to draw it from here. And that also connects up to one of the switches. You can define which switch you want it to be connected to, but this is what you call as the vkernel NIC, right? Think of it as VM kernel NIC, right? So that's one more thing, right? So just to recap, and we'll talk about all of this in a demo, but just to recap, we have port group, we have VNeck, That's the NICs for the VMs. We have the vSwitch. We talked about the vSwitch, which is in fact a standard switch. Then we have the physical NIC, and then a very interesting NIC, which is the vkernel NIC. Right? Awesome. So first, what we'll do is I'll take you through the topo here. So like I said, right, we have a couple of ESXi host here. I have third one. I have shut it down. Don't read too much into my firewall and this thing, the vCenter. I mean, the firewall is mainly there to kind of act as a DNS gateway and send the traffic out, and I have not defined any rules, traffic rules, anything on it. So it's not very relevant to the discussion, especially in the networking now, right? So we'll talk mainly about the V switches, right? So let's go. So let's go to the, so I'm on this particular guy. So let's go to, I think it's loading, give it a minute. So it does that a bit because I'm running on really low resources here, right? Ideally, you need to run your vCenter along with the ESXi at least a minimum around 10 or 12 GB. But I'm trying to squeeze this in just 6 or 8 GB. That's why you can see it's a bit slow and it tries to load and all of that. So bear with me. So we'll select the first host and let's see if we can get to the view. Yeah, there you go. So we'll select the first host, go to the configure, go to the virtual switches section, and here we should actually see the diagram with all the, let's pull this a bit down so that it's more evident. Yeah, there you go. Right, so this gray thing is actually your vSwitch, right? Whatever I was showing you in my diagram, this is actually the vSwitch. And you can see on one side you have the physical ports connected, right? And in my topology, like I said, 2 ports are on the LAN side and 1 more port is on the second vSwitch, and that is on the WAN side. So this is the third port, right? Third NIC, right? Sorry, I keep on using the word port, but it's actually the NIC. So you have 2 NICs on the LAN and 1 NIC on the WAN side. And on the LAN side, if you see, the vSwitch, if you look at it, forget about some of the iSCSI stuff here. It's related to storage, some other kind of labs which I'm working on. But stuff which is relevant to you guys is, let me also just get this out of the way because I'll show you that later. Just deleting a particular port for now. Okay, anyway, so port group, right? When I was talking about port groups, you can see, for example, there is a port group called management here. Actually, by default, there are 2 port groups created, right? One of them is called management network and the other port group is called actually VM network, right? I have just renamed it to management here, but by default, when you create the ESXi host, you basically get 2 different, port groups automatically created, right? One of them is actually VM network. I've just renamed it, right? So don't read too much into that. Cool. Anyway, so we've got, this is the port group, and you can see, you can have port groups for your normal NICs, that is VNeck, or you can have port groups for your vkernel NICs as well, right? I talked about 2 different NICs. If you see this thing here, so I talked about 2 NICs. One is the vkernel NIC and the other one is the VNeck. So you can have port groups for both of them, right? So this is literally actually the one at the below is actually your vkernel NIC, right? It's a port group for vkernel NICs. In fact, this one on the top right, these are the 2 virtual machines. One is the firewall and another one is the vCenter, which I have, and they are nothing but your port group for your normal NICs, VNeck, right? And you can see the details and all of that. So you can see, for example, my firewall, you can see the details, it tells you what kind of adapter type it is and all of that, right? Cool. So that's a little bit about that. So we can now just quickly go and create a vSwitch of our own. So let's do that. So let's click on add. If it's not getting stuck, I think we'll be able to proceed with the demo. Yeah. Okay. There you go. So we'll create so there are different options here. You can even add a physical network adapter if you have. Right now, I don't have anything left, right? I had 3 and I've used all the 3. On the top, we will create a vkernel network adapter later, but let's go with the normal port group for now. Click next. And here you have an option to either attach that port group to, so the first, let's go back again, right? So the first setting will always be this. You'll always get these 3 options, right? You have to go from here. You can't directly create a switch. You can't directly create a standard switch. You have to go from either one of these options. So I'm going to select that only, the port group, go next. And here I get an option to either select an existing switch or I can create a new one. Existing, it would give me option of 0 and 1 because I already have them. Let's go and create a new one. I'm feeling lucky today, so I'm going to create a new one. So once you go there, it's going to ask you, it's going to tell that, look, there is no physical network adapters, free, right? Right now there is nothing. We don't have anything free because I had 3, I've already used 3. But that's fine. I'm going to click next. It's going to give me a warning. This is just for demo, right? So that's fine. I'm going to click this thing, and I can give any name, right? So here I can give the name because it's just a switch. So I can probably, let's call it as a, I don't know, private something. Let's say private switch, right? Private. I'm going to say next. And there you go. It's going to give me some review, and there you go, finish. So now within few seconds, once this is completed, let's refresh this, and you can see it's not okay, there you go, right? Earlier there were 2 switches, now the 3rd switch has come, right? That's a vSwitch 2. We really did not have any provision to change this name. I think probably you can change it. I'm not sure. I've not tried that before. I think you can't, right? Anyway, so that's your switch, a new switch which we created, right? And now you can go on assigning your VMs to this guy. Right now there is nothing here selected, right? But if you really want to assign basically a port, if you want to assign this particular let's say you want to assign this guy, this particular port group to any VM, it's pretty simple. You go down to that particular VM, right? Click on, right click and go to I believe settings, edit settings. Bear with me, it's a bit slow. Right? So now once you go and click on edit settings of any VM, right, which is on that particular host, you get an option here. So I can add a new network adapter, right? So I can add a new network adapter here, right? Let's add that. And here under this section, I get to the new network adapter which you added. I can browse, right? So here I will basically get an option to, let's see, it's loading. Yeah, there you go, right? So I'm getting an option to select which network I want to connect it to. So you see the private network which I just now created with the new switch, I can select that. So once I select that, right, and then when I click OK, right, you can see here, let's click OK. And now if you go back to the networking section which we were seeing earlier, probably under the configuration, I guess, sorry, let's wait, it's a bit slow. Like I said, you gotta have a bit of patience when we are working with the VMware labs because you are exhausting all the memory up there. Right, it finally recorded, and now you can see this. So give me a second. Just get rid of that and that. Okay, so now you can see that we've got the virtual machine, right, which we were looking earlier, right? So you can see the VC01 is kind of like attached to this particular port group, which in turn is attached to this particular switch, right? So that's basically one thing which I wanted to show you. So that's how easy it is to kind of take a VNeck, right, attach it to a port group and then attach it to a switch, right? So that's, now if you want to do anything here, you'll have to basically if you want to remove this guy, you'll have to go and delete it from the settings first, right? Otherwise it's not going to allow you to do that. So what we'll do is we'll go to edit settings, and this is going to be useful for you guys as well. Whenever you're trying to delete a VNeck, first you've got to come here, come to the network adapter, and you will find a cross mark here. So I'm going to click on that, I'm going to save that, and when this comes up, right, it's going to take a few seconds. You can see at the below the activity is happening, and once that is completed, we should see that the vSwitch should have been, at least the VM should have been removed from that vSwitch, and then we will be able to go and delete the vSwitch as well, right? So let me show you that. So right now we are on the vSwitch page. So let's scroll down. See, now you have the vSwitch here, but now since nothing is connected, we can go and right click and remove it, right? There you go. So I'm deleting it. Cool. So that is one thing. That's about creating your switches. Now creating your VNecks, right? If you want to create new VNecks, it's actually a little misnomer, or basically I would say syntactically incorrect to say creating new VNeck, because VNecks are already there, right? You're not creating them. Whenever you basically go to any particular VM, right? You go to a particular VM like the one which I was showing here, right? So when you go to the edit settings and when you add a network adapter, that's literally how you like attach the VNeck which is already there to the corresponding port group, right? So you're not like creating any VNeck out of thin air, right? There are predefined, I think if I'm not wrong, there are like 4096, that's the upper limit of the number of VNecks which you can have, right? So these are your VMs and you're trying to connect them to a vSwitch, right? So the VNecks, this is how you create it. I mean, there's nothing magical about it. You just go and click add device just like how we did earlier. That's about creating VNeck. So all of these are connected, the VNeck, the port group and the vSwitch, right? So that's pretty much about how you can kind of like create a VNeck. So if anyone is telling you how do I create a VNeck, this is literally it. You come to the settings, you add a device, you add the network adapter, and then you go and select whichever network you want. That's literally nothing but the port group, and then that port group will in turn be connected to a particular vSwitch. Now we'll talk a little bit about this other interesting NIC which I was talking about, which is the kernel NIC, right? So how do you create those kernel NICs? So that's interesting, especially when we talk about vMotion, right? You really, what people do is vkernel NICs, they are special NICs. Think of them as special NICs, right? They are really used for all these advanced features like vMotion and so on, right? And let's jump directly to how do we create them, right? So let's go to the ESXi host. Let me just get this banner out of the way. That's basically telling me that I don't have any licenses, but that's fine. I'm on the evaluation license. So I'm going to click on add networking here, right? Let's just load. Okay, there you go. I'm going to add networking, and so what we can do now is we want to create a vkernel adapter. You can see the various functionality of the vkernel adapter. You can do vMotion, you can do vSAN, and a lot of other cool functionalities. So I'm going to click on next, and here I can select an existing network, right? The DMZ, the WAN, all of that, which probably is not getting shown. Okay, though I don't have any networks for the vkernel adapters as of now, right? I have it for the other NICs. And then it is asking me either I can select a existing switch, right? So in my case, I'm going to do that. I'm going to select the vSwitch 0 itself, right? I don't want to create a new switch. I'm going to connect it to the existing switch. But keep in mind, vkernel NICs, they are special NICs. They are not associated with VMs. They are associated with the whole ESXi host, right? So I'm going to say click on next. Now here, let's say I want to do vMotion, right? So I'm going to say vMotion, right? I'm going to give that as a name for the port group, right? This network label is nothing but the port group. And I also have a capability of doing something like providing a VLAN ID, right? So if I want to tag the traffic, right, which is going on this vkernel NIC, then I can do that. I'm going to put 103 because that's the VLAN which I'm using for my vMotion. And I'm going to select vMotion here. I can select any other functionality as well, but right now I just want a vMotion, right? So I'm going to select that. And here I can give IP addresses, right? Static or dynamic. I'll go with static, and I think my subnet for my vMotion is 10.2.1.11. Why I'm very specific about the subnet is because this has to match on the other side also, right? Which is the other server where I'll be migrating the VM to. So that's why I'm a little careful about that. Anyways, I'm putting the subnet here. So this is my IP 10.2.1.11. And let's click on next. So it's going to ask me to review everything. Looks good, so I'm going to say finish. So now if you come down, you should start seeing one more port group here called as vMotion. Let's wait for that. There you go, right? And we have the VM kernel which is attached to it, right? VM kernel is there here also, right? Because here VM kernel is used for the management 10.1.1.11, which is nothing but my ESXi, right? This particular managing the IP address to manage the ESXi host, right? Now vMotion. So we have created a separate vkernel port group for vMotion. Let's try if the vMotion is working. I'm not sure if it would work, but let's give it a try, right? I'm not sure if the settings on the other switch, or sorry, on the other host are correct, but anyway, let's give it a try. So I'm gonna say, sorry, you'll have to go to the VM. In my case, it is firewall 01, right? That's my VM. So I'm gonna say click on that, and I'm gonna say migrate. Right now this particular VM is on my ESXi 1, and I'm gonna say migrate only the compute resources only, right? So that's, I think we have to wait for some time. It's a bit slow, so bear with me. Alright, looks like it finally is allowing me to do the vMotion. So let's try this. So I'm on my VM, which is firewall 01. So I basically wanna just do migrate the compute resources of my firewall, right? So I'm gonna select next, right? And here I have an option to which particular ESXi I want to migrate it to. Right now, obviously the one which is connected, currently my VM is on ESXi 1, so I can migrate it only to the ESXi 2. So there you go, the compatibility checks have succeeded. So I'm going to go to next. So now what it's going to do is it is also going to check if the same networks, right, to which this VM is connected, which I'm trying to migrate, is also present on the other ESXi. It has found that it is. I have manually created these networks beforehand, so that's why it is able to figure out. And we are going to say next, and it's asking, should I schedule it with high priority? Yes, please do it. And there you go. So all the stuff is done. So I'm going to click finish, and now in the recent task here in the below, you should start seeing, there you go, right? You can see the vMotion happening. So we are literally moving this particular VM, which was initially with ESXi 1, right? I'm basically moving it moving it under ESXi 2, right? And you can see it is completing. It's probably going to take some time to complete because of my because all my RAM is exhausting. But yeah, that's one of the use case of having the vkernel ports, right? Apart from vMotion, you can use it for vSAN, you can use it for management and all the other stuff, right? So just like I mean, we are already using it for management. If you did not probably look at that before, you can have a look now. If you see the vkernel, right, we are already using it here for the management of the ESXi as well, right? But apart from that, you can also use it for vMotion and, like I said, for other utilities, right? I really also remember, you don't have to like create a separate vkernel just for vMotion. You can actually use the existing vkernel port for vMotion. I just created a new one because I wanted to segregate the traffic in a nice way, right? I don't want to choke my management network with my vMotion traffic. That's why I kind of segregated it, and I did it that way, right? So what else? So that's pretty much it, guys. I think hope that was useful. We covered quite a bit, right? We talked about the standard switches, right? We talked about the standard switches, why we need them, and the various components, right? Two types of NICs, VNeck and vkernel NICs. We talked about port group, right? The use case of port group is basically grouping your NICs and then putting some kind of policy on it. Then we talked about creating the vSwitch, deleting the vSwitch, and we also talked about the PNICs, right? The physical NICs as well, right? So thanks a lot for watching, and go ahead and create your own labs, right? It's pretty simple, right? Just very similar to what I've done in my previous videos. I had done it on Eve. Right now I'm doing it directly on my Fusion, and you can see it's working pretty cool, right? So thanks a lot, and yeah, do come back for more videos. Bye, guys.